Hello everyone, and let's talk about Outriders. And Jesus Christ, this game is horrible. First of all, we'll start with a lot of people defending it, saying it's not a live service game. To me, it is a live service game because it requires an internet connection to play it. That's right, you can't play the game offline. To me, that's a live service game. It requires a connection to a service that has to be live. What's not? How is it not a live service game? So if the server disconnects, even if you're just playing single player, it kicks you out and you can't play it. Similar to other games like Marvel's Avengers. Again, predominantly single player game, requires an internet connection. Call of Duty Black Ops Cold War, you can't play that offline, even if you don't have a connection. I've had the connection failed and it just kicks me out of the game. It just closes the game if your internet connection goes down or the connection to battle.net goes down. It just kicks you out. That's a live service game. I think Outriders is definitely a live service game. If it wasn't a live service game, I'd be able to play it offline, wouldn't I? Rather than online. So it is always on. Even if the always online is just DRM, and it doesn't really serve any practical purpose. It's a bit similar to The Sims. We had that issue where, again, that was a live service game because it required an online connection. Turned out it didn't really require it, but anyway, I would say that it's definitely a live service game, Outriders. The next issue you have when you finally get logged in, I don't really care. The server issues are to be expected, to be honest, and they're not the major issue. Big issue is when you log into the game, you finally get in, load up your character, no user interface. That's a huge bug for me. What you have to do is you have to log out of your character and log back in again. And then when you log back in again, I can't move my character. I've tried controller, I have tried mouse and keyboard. This happens frequently where it's if the controls just get locked out. So sometimes you've got to decide between the controls and the user interface, which makes the game pretty much unplayable. Obviously, you can't play it without controls, but it's unplayable without the UI either, as you can see from the footage here, with no user interface. I just decided screw it while the game was working. So you have to hope that you log in and you've either got the character movement or the user interface. You know, to me, that's really feels like that should have been picked up. I've seen a few of the Steam reviews with people complaining about the same thing with the user interface. It is a bit of a strange issue, but really the game shouldn't have launched without that issue. In terms of the game, the way it runs, I mean, it runs okay when you're in the game. However, the cutscenes are terrible. The cutscenes, you can lock the frame rate to either 30 or 60 FPS. The problem is, when you go into a cutscene, the transition is really jarring, especially if you've locked it at 30 FPS. And the cutscenes stutter like crazy as well. There's this weird stuttering issue. It only occurs in the cutscene. It doesn't matter whether you have the frame rate set to 30 FPS or 60 FPS. It still stutters. It drops down to 54 FPS, and then it goes to 60, but the frame time isn't stable. If you lock it to 30, it drops down into the 20s, which kind of slows the cutscene down. So I've never really watched a full cutscene in this game, because I just end up skipping them because I don't like jittery cutscenes. They're difficult to watch and they're annoying. And then when you go back to gameplay, it takes a few seconds to remove the frame rate cap. So you can wander around for a couple of seconds at 30 FPS and then it jumps back up to a triple digit FPS. It is weird. The game does support DLSS. Apparently there's a lot of issues with the DirectX 12 version, but the DirectX 11 version is worse because there's no DLSS in the DirectX 11 version, so you get worse performance overall. So the gameplay elements run worse. Or you could have the cutscenes running bad. Neither situation is good. So this game just wasn't ready for release. I mean, I don't think it's acceptable to release a game in a state where, also going in a state like this, but also going in and out of the menus, it seems to lock the frame rate when you're in the menu, and then unlock the frame rate when you get out of the menu. But again, there's this weird transition. And bear in mind, this is a looter shooter. You're going to be spending a lot of time in the menus going through loot. And for some reason, they've decided to just copy and paste Destiny's menu system. I don't get that. I really don't get it. It is an exact carbon copy of Destiny. And then you get into the actual game design quirks, which is there. I don't think this game was designed to be played as a single player game. It really is. There's far too many enemies on the screen, far too much health, and far too many effects going off at the one time. A lot of times you really don't get what's going on. It's a bit like Marvel's Avengers, where Jesus Christ, tone down the effects, please. I'm sick of the amount of visual effects. It's just clutter. It's just visual clutter on the screen where you can barely see anything that's going on. There's far too many enemies. The boss fights are kind of stupid in the sense that bosses do a big ability that you have to interrupt. The problem is there's no off-screen alert for this ability. If the boss is off-screen, you don't get an alert that they're using an ability. You have to be looking at the boss the whole time. Bear in mind this is a first-person shooter, or a third person shooter should we say, and you're going to be moving the camera around trying to target enemies, especially if you're sniping an ad. You can't see what the boss ability is charging up because there's so many ads and you're surrounded by enemies, so you end up just dying because you just run out of space in the end. You just get cornered. The boss just advances towards you with so much health. You can barely interrupt their abilities because, again, you don't get an off-screen alert. Again, compare that to Marvel's Avengers, where you do get a little... When the enemy that's firing at you charging up a big attack, you get a little exclamation mark and a blue circle thing that fills up to tell you that, hey, that enemy off-screen's targeting you. You might want to dodge that. That's quite helpful. That's a really helpful game design point. Again, I don't like Marvel's Avengers, but at least it helps you out there by telling you that. Outriders doesn't do this. A lot of times you'll get hit with things that you're supposed to avoid or try and interrupt, but at times you're looking at something else. Your attention's drawn away from the boss. I think it's ridiculous. Either just make the bosses have mechanics. It's fine to have the bosses have mechanics, but if I can't focus on the boss, if I can't focus target the boss, and I can't see those mechanics, you can't really blame me for screwing them up. Really, when I can't see them, I have to deal with the ads because I'm going to get shot to pieces by the ads. And you have to deal with the boss as well. So it asks a lot of the player. A lot of times it gets you out of cover and gets you moving around, but you don't last very long out of cover. So you're constantly moving, which is fine. But I just want the chance to be able to shoot at things, and I don't really like the way that the design is. I just think it's a horrible mismatch. Again, it's an easy solution to fix. Like I said, just have an off-screen alert that the boss is going to do something, and let me deal with it, and that's fine. I can target the boss and fire my interrupt ability, and that's fine. I'm okay with that. But I just don't like the complete clusterfuck of a game that it is. It's too many visual effects. There's way too much going on for you to process at the time, and it's just ridiculous. It just becomes noise in the end. Is that what the next gen is going to be? Just a visual clusterfuck? Just because you can doesn't mean you have to. I mean, should get to the graphics settings and turn the visual effects down. Maybe that would help on the PC. But anyway, I really don't like Outriders, and I don't think I will continue playing it. And that is all for this video. So thank you for joining me. I will see you again soon, and goodbye.